Hello everyone and welcome back to The Aspect. Today's episode features guests from the International Youth Think Tank. I talked to the IYTT's Managing Director and co-founder, Urban Strandberg. He's an Associate Professor of Political Science, a Senior Lecturer and the Director of the Double Degree Master's Programme at the University of Gothenburg. Taylor Swift fan Mahek is an undergraduate law student at Warwick University. She focuses on social mobility and was the contributing author of a workbook to start decolonising social sciences at Warwick. Michele is a sociology student at the University of Trento in Italy, passionate about education and the environment. With the IYTT, he developed the format of open chair democracy talks, promoting citizens' engagement. And lastly, Philippine is a 24-year-old working against land degradation and desertification. She has been involved in environmental and debate associations since she was 15, and she joined the IYTT in 2019. I hope you enjoy. Hello everyone and welcome to The Aspect. Today on the show we have the International Youth Think Tank and I'm going to be talking to Urban, Philippine, Michele and Mahek. I'm so glad to have you guys on today. How are you all doing?
I'm fine. Glad to be on the podcast. Thank you.
Thank you, Philippine. Mahek, how are you?
It's great. It's gloomy as always in the UK. It's a wonderful morning. Yeah.
Oh, I'm glad to have you. Michele, how are you doing?
It's sunny here, so I'm doing great.
And where is that?
This is Trento, Italy.
Oh, lovely. Of course it's sunny there. And Urban, how are you doing?
I couldn't think about a better start of the Saturday morning than being in the pod, so smashing.
Thank you so much, guys, for coming on today. I'm really excited to chat to you a bit more about the IYTT and obviously sustainability in general. I know that it's the IYTT's 5th anniversary this year. Urban, can you tell us a little bit about the IYTT?
Well, it was started in 2019 by myself and my dear friend Cecilia Malmström. And, well, we were at that time depressed, to say the least, that too many people of the world are not really trusting democracy any longer. And, well, for good reasons, I think, because their voices are not heard. And they are kind of attracted to other ideas of nationalism, populism. And so democracy is losing ground. So the IYTT, we started it all because we think that young people, they have an activist instinct. Mm-hmm. And we need that activist instinct. And what the IYTT is doing is, you could say, using the activist instinct, but then adding a thorough, academically and artistically well-grounded methods. Yeah. So use the activist instinct to make the world a better place, and remember that every individual is unique and should be entitled to have a voice, but then bring up proposals, protest and whatever in sound, strong ways that would be heard by people with power. So that is the IYTT in brief, I would say.
Thank you for that, Urban. I think it's such a good initiative to have created, especially back in 2019, and for it to be going so strong today. Obviously, the concept of democracy itself is a pretty old one with its birthplace back in Athens. How do you think that democracy has changed over the years? Do you think the concept still remains the same, or do you think that it's changed as the world has changed?
Well, I mean, if you look around the world, among the established democracies, the most depressing things, I would say, that very few citizens are really active in democracy. 50, 60 years ago, many more people were active. They were taking upon responsibilities for taking decisions for their fellow citizens, but that is not longer the case. That is one dramatic change. I think another one, of course, is the media landscape. I mean, since the last 10 to 15 years, mm-hmm. which is, so many different views on what people are like and what is happening in development. So it's harder today, I think, to summon people around a common cause. So I think that is a tough thing for democracy to work today.
Definitely. Thanks for that, Urban. And Philippine, Michele and Mahek are all youth fellows from different years for the IYTT. How did you guys get involved in the IYTT? Where were you in your studies, or where were you in your life to then suddenly have such an interest in democracy? Mahek, do you want to go first?
Yes, sure. I mean, I've always been involved in social mobility and youth engagement throughout school and at uni. I was working on a lot of projects around social mobility within the university, and I felt a bit disengaged at law school, because the sort of environment there was very get a job after uni and that's all that you can aim for. And I really was sort of craving a platform where I would meet other like-minded individuals that would also be passionate about things like sustainability or renewing democracy, things that I was really interested in growing up in and spending 18 years of my life in India. I came across the IYTT on LinkedIn, ironically. On my law school's LinkedIn, and I thought, this is an incredible opportunity, but it's going to be 24 participants from so many that are going to be selected amidst so many applicants. And I thought, well, I have so much free time. It was a summer. I thought I might as well apply. And then I got a lovely email saying I'd been invited to the conference, and it was honestly great. And I had an incredible time with so many interesting and diverse individuals at the conference. So it's been just sort of a natural progression from things I was already doing, but I was given a platform, which is something that didn't happen before. So
and I think that's really important, is giving the youth that platform. I think, that's what the IYTT is incredible at doing. And when I've spoken to Urban in the past, that's something that I've always admired about the organization. Philippine, Michele, how did you guys get involved in the IYTT, and where do your interests lie in terms of democracy and sustainability?
Well, I was doing my Erasmus exchange program at the time when I heard about the IYTT, and I think it was just the right time for me because I was seeing what could be elsewhere. I only know France because I'm a French person and I've always lived there. So seeing how different things could be outside, abroad, really hit me. And when I saw the IYTT being held in a conference in Sweden with lots of people from different backgrounds, I was really attracted to that. And same as Mahek, I was kind of scared not to be selected, but the strength of the IYTT is it's not all about academic careers or anything like that. It's about ideas. It's about the will to make things change. And I really felt drawn to that. And it was a really good experience. I'm from the 2019 batch, so the first.
The originals.
The first conference ever. And it remains still one of my most cherished moments because it made me grow personally, I think, a lot.
That's great. Thank you, Philippine. And Michele?
For me personally, if I had to name one reason I applied, it was probably for the connections and the people I would find. Because I remember looking through the people that had participated to the previous year conference and thinking, like reading their bios and saying, well, these are very cool people. I want to meet some of them. And so I applied and got selected and had a chance to interact with 24 very peculiar and very ambitious individuals. So that's the things. I think that's the richness of the IYTT.
Yeah. And can one of you tell me a little bit more about the annual conference that happens with the IYTT?
Every year, between 20 and 25 students from all over Europe are selected to take part in a 4-day conference in Gothenburg. And more than a conference, I would call it a workshop, because you really have to get your hands dirty. And you hear a bit of speaking in the morning, but then in the afternoon, it's you doing the work. And the conference ends with proposals that are drafted during those 4 very intense days.
And Urban, what is the outcome of, so obviously the outcome of the conference are these different policy documents that are drafted. What do you guys do with those documents after the conference ends?
So, we publish them in conference reports, in conference proceedings, and one of the most innovative things that we have come up with is a handbook for innovative democracy. So we are kind of compiling all the proposals very neatly in a overviewable way. And the idea about that is that the proposals presented in such a way could inspire powerful people to take on some of the proposals, because by and large, one ground thing about the IYTT is to inspire for change. And so if we could be innovative, and if the youth fellows could come up with great ideas and publish them in this handbook, maybe, hopefully, in the long run, many powerful people will get inspired, and then we will have attraction for what we're doing.
Yeah. And I've seen one of the handbooks and it's so cool. But I love that you guys have made it incredibly visually pleasing. It's something where I think the concept of democracy and then everything it relates to can seem a little bit daunting and a bit overwhelming. But the way you guys have crafted the handbook, I honestly, congrats. I think it's such a cool way of demonstrating it, especially using the key. And obviously listeners who haven't seen it won't know what I'm talking about. We'll link it down in the description box of this episode so that people can have a look at it if they want to. But it's such a cool way of demonstrating and illustrating different policies, which are incredibly practical for different countries around the world. And, you know, this is real stuff you guys are doing. It's not hypothetical. So I think that's really cool. What I want to move on to is to talk about sustainability as a concept. Now, when we had a chat before our episode, we talked about how the concept of sustainability means something very different to all of us. And I'm lucky enough to have 4 of you on the episode today. And so I want to hear who thinks what about sustainability and sustainable futures. What does it mean to you guys?
Yeah, tough question. Thank you for asking me. I would say that sustainability to me means harmony with nature, harmony with people. And I think that we have a lot to learn, especially from indigenous people, for instance, because I think it's the opposite of individualism. Herben was talking about this maybe earlier when he was talking about the differences of like different movements within democracy. I think this is what has changed the most. It's now that we're more individualist.
I love that word that you're using. I haven't really thought about sustainability using the word harmony. I think it's such a holistic approach to the term, which is very much needed. I mean, Mahek, what are your thoughts on this?
I mean, I think a common image that comes to everyone's heads when they think of sustainability is building a healthy environment for the future. And it's sort of seen as this big green message flashing right at you and all these climate warriors. But as important that is, it's so much more than that. And we discussed this in the prep meeting, is sustainability is a lot more than just, you know, protecting the environment, although that is one of the most raging concerns, and rightfully so. It's about, at least for me, building a safer and a healthier future for everyone. And that doesn't just mean a healthy and a safer future in terms of global warming, but also how do we treat other people that don't necessarily look like us or have the same resources as us. So it's every aspect of humanity and building it to enable it to be safer and healthier for the future generations.
I think the first image that pops up in my mind when I think of sustainability is that of this huge clock that is being built in the desert of Texas by the Long Now Foundation. I don't know if you've heard about this. The Long Now Foundation is a foundation working on long-termism.
Okay.
And to symbolize their work, they decided to build this giant clock that's immense, like 5 stories.
Wow.
And this clock will work for 10,000 years, ticking a time. And it's just a reminder for us to try and think long-term.
Yeah.
In a world that really lives on the short term. Sustainability, to me, reminds me of an impact in the future.
I think that's such a cool way of looking at it because, as you said, especially things like the climate crisis, whilst we are talking about what is going to happen in the future, it's talked about incredibly in the present tense and everything that's happening in sort of the next year and the next few years. And so talking about sustainability, whilst, yes, we need short-term strategies, that long-term plan is so important in order to sustain short-term strategies. So yeah, thank you for that. And Urban, I'd love to hear your thoughts about sustainable futures, because I hope you don't mind me saying, as someone from an older generation, I'd love to hear how the term has maybe changed for you over time.
Absolutely. I mean, it gained traction with the Brundtland report way back, and it was so focused on nature. And we know that that definition of the concept have drifted away quite much, very much put it better. Admittedly, what I'm going to say now is a much narrower definition, you could say, and I wouldn't rule out my definition from anyone else. I'm very much in favor of thinking about humans, because I think humans, individuals, I mean, every person is unique, and there's such an amazing strength if bringing out the uniqueness of every individual. So that is a very sustainable thing, I think. Another thing is that unique individuals, when they join together in productive ways that kind of doesn't suppress anyone, that is also an amazing strength. Sustainability would be if we could combine recognition and amplification of the individual unique capacities and longings with, I mean, the thing that we do together. I mean, being compassionate, being communal, wanting to do things together because we need to do things together, and that we grow as individuals together. So that is my take on sustainability. Admittedly, a little bit narrower, but still.
No, that's great. And I think slightly more narrowed conceptions of sustainability are just as important as those that are broad. In fact, they might be more important because the broad ones just tend to be quite daunting. On the back of that, Urban, I want to ask you, especially as one of the managing directors of the IYTT, how powerful can that youth engagement be? Obviously, you have that at the absolute heart of the IYTT.
I think that, I mean, it could be really, really powerful because, well, young people like you are really amazingly full of energy, and you're not bounded like older people are. You are kind of boundless in thinking about what is possible, and if given the right requirements, I think youth could have a very strong impact. I mean, not only for the moment when you're young, but if you are kind of breeded, if I may use that word, as activists when you're young, and you would bring that with you. So maybe the strongest influence of youth would be coming when you get older, if we are breeded in a good way when you're young, because too many old people are getting bored, I mean, and they are kind of leaving out the ideals and the strength and the passions that they have as young. And so the IYTT should have as one of its important tasks to remind people about the thing that you feel when you are young.
And that's what I love. I think there's so much energy when I talk to all of you guys. And that's what I felt from looking at the IYTT as an entity, is that there's just that energy there. So I think you're doing a really good job at trying to take the youthful outlook and then carry that through. I mean, Mahek, how powerful do you think youth engagement can be?
I mean, we all hear sort of the cheesy term again and again that you're going to be the future, and it puts a lot of pressure on you. And you think, oh my God, I don't know what I want to do in the next year. How am I supposed to figure out what the world is going to look like in 20 years? But it is reality. We are going to be the future. And it's important that, you know, when I'm sure everyone at the IYTT is going to move on to become world leaders, like just having a small conversation with them makes it very evident. And anyone that's listening to this podcast there's a very high probability that they're going to be in a role where they make decisions that impact a large group of people.
And
hence it's important to be well versed with what the future is supposed to look like. And I think it's important to not live in a bubble. And I think once we get out of that bubble as young people and we look at the world through several perspectives and lenses, we realize the power we have and the difference that we can make. And it's so important because we are going to end up making decisions that impact the future generations. And as Aran said, there's so many events around the world that are going to try and make us lose that strength, and politicians that are going to say words that make us think, is it even worth it? Is it even worth it trying to fight for something that looks like it's not going to happen? But it's important to not lose that strength. And that's what I think youth engagement is all about, is inspiring people to not lose that vigor and not lose that strength, because we're going to take on some very influential roles.
I love that. Thank you for that, Mahek. Philippine, do you have anything to add to what Mahek was talking about?
I just wanted to add that, you know, youth is a very broad term and you do not really know what youth is. And I think age is not supposed to be a limit or anything. For instance, if we go back to where the entire environmental youth strike came from, it was from Greta Thunberg. Sorry, Herben, I'm rubbish with Swedish pronunciation. But anyway, she was just a young girl, you know, one small step at a time. I think the broad youth that we are, can do enormous things and changing really the way society works.
So the rapid fire question round, this is very much unrelated to sustainability. And what I'm going to do is I'll randomly call upon each of you to answer a question as quickly as you can. Philippine, what's your favorite season?
Fall.
Okay. Michele, what's your favorite color?
Orange. And I'm asking this question to all of my friends lately, and I feel like warm colors are coming up more than like.
Does anyone want to guess what my favorite color is? It's not hard.
Black.
Red.
Green.
Green. Did Philippine say green?
Yeah.
It is. Yes, it is green. Thank you. Mahek, what's your favorite type of food?
Indian food.
Okay. Urban, what was your first job?
Well, and I was an administrator at an elderly care home.
Oh, cool. And for our listeners, again, what is your job title now?
IYTT Managing Director and University Lecturer.
I love that. Philippine, what is a song that makes you happy?
Move On Up, I think that's the title.
Oh, that's a good song.
Yeah.
I like that. That's a very good song. Mahek, we're coming to you next. What is the first word that comes to your mind right now?
Taylor Swift, because someone mentioned their favorite song, and any
I
song
love
by her
that.
would be my favorite song.
I love that. Michele, what's your favorite dessert?
Tiramisu.
Of course.
Urban, in your opinion, what is the best age to be?
14.
Oh, that's a good. I hope everyone's trying to think now what they were doing at the age of 14. Philippine, what habit holds you back the most?
Taking too much time of my life making coffee.
Mahek, which one person inspires you the most?
My partner, because he's really hardworking. So
Aw.
sorry to be that cheesy person.
Oh, that's so sweet. I was thinking you might say your mum or like, Michelle Obama, but we'll take that. The partner is good. That's good. That's
Yeah,
great.
I feel
I'm
bad
glad.
now.
No.
My mum's name.
No, that's fine. I'm sure she's up there as well. Michele, what time of day do you feel the most inspired?
Right after lunch. Like I
Really?
usually take walks.
I feel that's when I totally dip in my energy. Philippine, if you had to give someone a Netflix series recommendation, what would it be?
Brooklyn Nine-Nine.
And our final one is for Urban. What career did you dream of having as a kid?
Farmer.
Really? Do you still want to do that now or not?
No way.
That's great. And actually, this is one for all of the youth fellows. Do any of you still have a dream job that you're happy to share with us?
I guess I would just love to become a teacher. I think it's the best job in
Oh,
work.
cool.
Change my mind.
And Philippine?
I would like to own a farm shelter. So kind of related to the farmer job of Urban.
I will come and
I love
visit.
Oh, all right, you're invited, of course.
And Mahek, do you have a dream job or one as a kid?
Gosh, I have absolutely no idea, but I'd like to, this sounds really specific, but I'd like to work in judicial review, hopefully work in public law and do something good with my degree, hopefully hold the government to account, but that's such a
very cool.
specific job. I wish it was a teacher or something more.
No, not at all. We are happy to do career calls on this show. So anyone who's listening, there we go. Hire Mahek. That's great. Thank you guys for taking part in the rapid fire question round. I've definitely learnt more about you all. So that was great fun. I hope you guys enjoyed that as well.
And I need to add, because I have my dream job. This is managing the IYTT is my dream job, and that is because what I'm entitled to do is to make young people grow, thrive, and do something for the bettering of the future. And to see young people grow, that is just amazingly privileged.
I love that. We could end there, Urban. We could honestly end there. Forget about the rest of the podcast. What a great ending line. So, who wants to jump in first about how you're working towards sustainable futures?
So me, myself, I guess it's time to mention the Open Chair Democracy Talks. So sit tight. OCDTs, I will call them. They are a new format that we at the IYTT have implemented 2 years ago now. And an Open Chair Democracy Talks simply involves 2 chairs in the middle of a square or a public street.
Mm-hmm.
And one of us, you fellows, sitting on one facing the other chair that is empty. And a poster inviting strangers to sit and talk to us. And what happens is that people do sit and talk to us. And we talked to them about democracy. We asked them quite specific questions about freedom and equality and power and how much they feel engaged. And we do this for two reasons. On one side, we get to know what ordinary people think about democracy, which is something you don't hear.
Yeah.
We only hear about experts, and we know what experts think now. But we do want to hear from the people on the street and get that perspective as well. But the second reason, I think, is that the people that live the conversation, they go home with a sparkle in the head, thinking of if they are engaged enough in their community, if there is space for more engagement, if they are truly exploiting their rights as citizens, if they could do more. And we've been doing this for a while now, and we've run open chair democracy talks in more than 30 cities worldwide, and we will do this again in May 2023, where we will invite people, even not part of the IYTT, to take part in an open chair democracy talks in their cities and invite strangers to talk to them about democracy.
That's very cool. Thank you for explaining that, Michele. And is there a way for members of the public to get involved in that? Can you explain how they would get in touch?
I think the first way to do this is to go in the IYTT website, that's IYTT, and sign up to the newsletter. You will only get 4 mails a year. It's really not intrusive at all. But I guess that's the way we will keep you informed about the upcoming Open Chair Democracy Talks weekend and how you can help us run Open Chair Democracy Talks in your places.
That's great. Thank you for that. And I think it's a really cool way of getting young people involved if they don't know too much about democracy or haven't studied it to a great degree. It's quite a creative mechanism of the IYTT, which I really loved hearing about when Urban first told me about it.
I just wanted to add, because we did one open chair democracy talk with Michele and Urban in the streets of Athens, the cradle of democracy. So I think it was really powerful, And one thing I remarked then was that at the beginning, no one cared about us at all. At one time, I don't know, there's this guy who sat with us and it just sparked something. Like people wanted to be listened to. And really wanted to ask questions and be involved. They wanted to make their voice heard. And I think this is what the Open Chair Democracy Talks also offer to people.
That's great. Thank you for that, Philippine. That's what's really important coming out of this, as you said, is that desire to be listened to. It actually doesn't matter what age you are, doesn't matter where you're from, what your background is, but to be given a platform to say something, doesn't matter how democratic your country is or not, people don't necessarily feel like they can speak up if they're not given the mechanisms to do so. And Urban, I want to come to you for this question as well, because we kind of know how the IYTT is harnessing the power of the youth, but what is the future for the IYTT? So in terms of sustainable futures, how are you going to progress the organization towards that concept of sustainability?
Well, when we started in 2019, the first conference that Philippine came to, we traveled people to Gothenburg without any consideration of being sustainable. Some of them flew, even though they could have been traveling by train.
Right.
So themselves, they blamed me quite hard and asked me, what are you doing? So that was a really wake-up call. So since then, we have decided that people shouldn't travel longer than could be done with trains, most of them. So we have confined the IYTT basically for the European continent for sustainability traveling reasons. And I mean, that is sound. But at the same time, people from all over the world have been applying and wanted to be with us. So we need to do something about it. We want to expand because, well, Europe is only one of the continents, and people want to be acting for a sustainable and more democratic world all over the world. So what we are now setting out to do is to start to run youth conferences in the same way as we've been doing Europe, and also for that matter, the Open Chair Democracy Talks in other continents. And we will probably start in Southern Africa. So hopefully early spring next year, we run a youth conference in Southern Africa. And then we will just take one continent at a time. So the long-term vision, and we have really strong ambitions, the long-term vision is within 10 years from now, we would run youth conferences on every continent. And it will be a really fine thing, because think about it, if youth from every continent then come together and compare their different views with one another, you could see similarities and differences. And youth could be the carriers, the spreaders of ideas across continents and countries. That is what I think in the long run would be our contribution to sustainability.
Yeah, this is what I absolutely love, because first of all, being honest enough to vocalize the fact that things were not necessarily done in the most sustainable fashion back in the day when you guys first came to light as an organization, but to understand as well that Europe as a continent is arguably one of the most democratic across the globe, and so it's really important that obviously you guys do tap into other continents that are not fortunate enough to have such democratic systems, and be able to give them a platform and talk to them.
I just want to add that my experience in the last conference, despite it being predominantly, Europeans taking part in the conference, I'm not European, and I was given the opportunity to take part in there. But despite that, there was so much diversity in terms of nationality. So I think that was kept in mind whilst selecting participants, and that really helped, because despite it being a European conference in the sense that only Europeans were allowed to participate, the discussions weren't focused on European issues. We focused on multicultural, diverse problems that affected. We had a participant from South Africa talking about the challenges that South Africa faced. I was talking about challenges that India faced. We had another participant from Singapore, and that really helped, because despite limitations because of sustainability, it didn't really feel like the conversations were predominantly ethnocentric or Eurocentric. And I found that really, really encouraging, because I expected to a certain degree that it would be Eurocentric, and my expectations were effectively tarnished. And that's really, really nice.
No, thank you for the honesty. And it's so good to hear that there is work being done to make these kind of conferences and movements more accessible, because there's no point talking about sustainability if it's not accessible as a conversation. So thank you guys for the work that you're doing. That's a thank you from me, because it's so great to talk to an organization that's actually working towards those and working to plow through those challenges, should I say. Whether this is in a more personal sense or through your career, how are you working to harness the power of younger generations?
So as part of the IYTT, I guess one of the main goals and one of the main things we do is to bring young people like me and my friends, the youth fellows, to audiences where normally only older people are allowed to speak. We've been taking part in many conferences, and in all of them, we were almost always sitting at a kids' table. The last one I took part in was the Athens Democracy Forum, a very grand venue organized by the New York Times in Athens, with very few young people. Being there and being given a space on the floor and being under the spotlight and talking to many old people who make decisions, I think it's crucial to have them see the good sides of our generations, and to have them seeing that there's many young people that want to work for the good of the planet and the people around them. So I think the main thing we do for youth engagement is to bring young voices to places and people where normally older people are speaking.
Philippine, do you have anything to add to that about harnessing the youth's power?
Well, I think what Michele says is basically it. I mean, this is what the IYTT is allowing us to do. And I would not repeat what he just said, but I will also add that once you're part of this movement, it broadens your horizon in a way, and you feel like you can do things that were out of reach. That's really what is making the movement goes on and on and on, because you always bring your friends with you. Like, for instance, there's this, climate strike. You can come with me, or there's this open democracy talks in my city. Would you like to come with me? And this is an ongoing process, and this is also what I really like about being a youth fellow. It really broadens your horizon.
Thank you for that, Philippine. And it sounds like it's also totally boosted your confidence in multiple different ways, which is really good to hear. And I'm sure is the case for many youth fellows, without generalizing.
Michele mentioned the thing about the Athens Democracy Forum and the conference, and giving where Elena and Larissa were given the opportunity to voice things, and they did that without considerations of being kind of nice. I mean, they were polite and they were generally nice, but they were given, I mean, every strength, every criticism they had, they just gave it to every to the audience, and you could tell the difference because, well, the audience, the old people, they couldn't resist the strength when the youth fellows were just sincere. And that is, so that is also my general advice, not only to the youth fellows, but to every young person. I mean, don't try to be like an adult. Don't be dull. You should be polite, but be angry and passionate and sincere as long as you have good arguments, because you would be more influential. And by the end of the day, all the people, they just love the sincerity and the strength of a young person.
I love that. So for listeners, if you take nothing else away, don't be dull. That is that is Urban's advice. I love that. Thank you, Urban. And so to move on now, I like to end things on the aspect with media recommendations from my guests, because the idea here is to sort of collate a big list of recommendations that relate to sustainability or the youth in some way. Everyone always brings an incredibly unique insight to the table. So Mahek, do you want to go first and share your media recommendation with us?
So this, I had a documentary in mind, and it's quite politically motivated, but just apart from that, it's all about youth engagement. And whether you agree with their political views or not, it really inspires you to sort of get up and do something. And it's called Knock Down the House, and it sort of traces the political journey of some politicians like AOC in the US, and it's so inspiring. If you have some free time, I definitely recommend watching that.
That's a great one. Thank you. That's on Netflix, isn't it?
Yes, it's on Netflix.
Perfect. That's great. And Michele, what's your media recommendation for listeners?
So I was thinking of an artist. Her name is Candy Chang. She has done many things, many beautiful artworks. She has given a TED Talk as well.
Wow.
And one of her artworks is called I Wish This Was. And I Wish This Was is a sticker that's this small that says I wish this was, and then there's an empty space. And she's given this sticker to many mayors and city leaders worldwide. And mayors have let the stickers available for citizens. And citizens can go around the city and paste it to, I don't know, an abandoned housing lot or an empty space. And they can say, okay, I wish this was a playground. I wish this was refurbished or things like this. And I think it's really powerful to see that people can have a say on their locality. And it really brings up another theme that to me is very important, and that is local action. Changing one building or one street might seem very small and minuscule if you think about the global crises we're talking about, but it's really the place to start.
That sounds super cool. Thank you for that, Michele. And Philippine, do you want to share your media recommendation with us?
Do you know what? I think it's actually the toughest question you've asked us so far. So I really struggled with that question. If it comes to like a documentary, I would probably recommend Cowspiracy and Seaspiracy on Netflix, which is all about the way, again, we're not in harmony with nature. But if it comes to a book, I would like to speak about 14 Wolves, which talks about the reintroduction of wolves in the Yellowstone National Park in the US, and basically demonstrating how the reintroduction of a wolf in its natural habitat made life spring, because to be in harmony with nature is to realize that we're part of this ecosystem, and trying to change it is not sustainable. And this is what the youth needs to have in mind, that we're part of something greater than us, and we just need to find our place and not try to be on top of everything else.
Yeah,
so
that sounds very eye-opening. Thank you for that. And Urban, lastly, what is your media recommendation for listeners?
I'm recommending the Death Letter Project, which was started by an Australian artist called Tina FiveAsh 5 years ago. The project has been expanding. So I stumbled across this project in Raleigh, North Carolina in the US, where I have friends. So in the vicinities of where they're living, people are sharing ideas, experiences about death within a digital platform, which was then originally drafted by this artist. And it is amazingly how many subtle and important ideas about life that are pronounced in those letters. And it's a very, very fine thing to bring out things that not often are in the open, because, I mean, thinking about death incentivizes you differently. And it's a very, very fine thing. So the Death Letter project, I mean, it seemed maybe a little bit gloomy, but well, life is gloomy, but more importantly, very many fine thoughts about what it takes to be a human being are exposed in those letters.
Thank you for that. Sounds like a great way to place greater value on what we have now as well. And finally, I like to wrap up with my guests by sharing calls to action. So Mahek, please share your call to action for listeners.
I think following on from what Philippine said in an answer recently, go to strike actions, go to protests, take your friends along, hear what people have to say that are suffering, that don't just base your political opinions off of things you read in the newspapers or things you hear on the TV. Go to strikes, go to protests, get involved, and you will definitely learn a lot more and become a more empathetic human being.
Thank you for that, Mahek. Michele?
My call to action will be to start locally. What I mean by local is not national, it's not regional, it's not city-wise, it's about the street. I mean that locally. I'm part of an association here at university that works on decarbonizing the university. And what we do is that we try to lobbying the university to adopt more sustainable practices. And of course, decarbonizing the university is not going to change the world, but do not discard local action. I would say that many small people in many small places doing many small things can actually alter the face of the world.
That's great. Thank you, Michele. And Philippine?
One small action can trigger an enormous change. It's kind of like the butterfly effect, you know? It's maybe one day you'll be waking up and be too tired to go to a strike, as Mahek was saying, but realize that maybe just showing up there, well, you'll be interviewed by Chef on her podcast and, you know, carrying attention on this topic, and you never know what's going to come next. So you can start small, but you never know what's coming next. You can inspire people. It's not about doing your part, it's just to be true to who you are, to your values. And this is what Urban was saying, I think, when he was saying, do not be dull, basically. Just be true to your values, and you never know what your action can trigger. And I think that's beautiful.
I love that. Thank you, Philippine. And Urban, to close us off today, your final call to action for listeners.
Yes, and that is to be having a mindset of set things going in your life, even though you're not really sure of the next step or the step afterwards, because the IYTT, well, we have some basic ideas when it started at all, but then it has evolved, and we have just grabbed whatever come across us to do things that we all of a sudden comes to our mind. That is a very powerful thing, not thinking that I couldn't start doing something, I couldn't start discussing something because I don't know how it will run. I mean, don't bother. Just start and be prepared of adapting underway, be prepared of learning underway, be prepared of, because it is the way, that is the thing. So just start running, and because so many people would hold themselves back, and that is so wasteful. And it will be just fine. It would be more than fine if you just take the jump. That is the thing.
I love that. Thank you, Urban.
The first time I heard Urban talking about this trust in the next step thing was in Sweden last year. And we were on a rocky shore, and there was no clear path, but we had to keep going. And we were walking by placing our feet on the rocks and just trusting the next step, because the rocks were very uneven. And he said this, well, this is a metaphor for life. Just need to go ahead and do one step after the other, even if you don't see a clear path.
I love
when
that.
You get there and you look back, you will see a path eventually.
Yeah. I think it's such a good call to action for life in general, is just focus on the next step, but take the next step. don't hesitate. As you said, just keep running and the path will appear, because you've set the intention to go. We will make sure all of those media recommendations are listed in the episode description so that our listeners can check those out, if whichever ones they want to. And I think you guys are doing such amazing work, Urban, with the IYTT, you guys as youth fellows and within your careers. But thank you guys so much for coming on The Aspect today.
Thank you, Chef, for having us.
Thank you, Chef.
Lovely initiative, Chef. We are glad to be with you.
And for listeners, wherever you are in your day, I hope it's great. And we will catch you next time on The Aspect with a new guest. Thank you guys, and take care. Hi everyone, thank you for listening and watching this episode of The Aspect podcast. Please like, follow and subscribe on your favourite listening app. You would make me very happy. Be sure to follow me on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok and YouTube. All of the socials will be on the website. Take care of yourselves. I'll be back soon.